Hey guys, mcfixit here. We're going to be making this really sweet Discraft Meteor. It's going to look just like this. I'm going to show you all the tools, all the supplies. The disc originally looked like this, so we'll take a little bit of effort and know-how, but I'm going to walk through the entire video on how we make the stencil, how we erase the Meteor and the mid-range so that is not prominent on there, and do all the tracing and everything you need, cleaning the disc. So here are the tools and the supplies that you're going to need. Linked in the description, I have my website, and this is kind of the design I chose. It kind of looks somewhat like the Flash. Didn't want copyright issues, so this is kind of my own version of the Flash. And my buddy John, whose disc this is, loves the Flash, and so this is going to work great for him. I made a stencil out of pretty much this and taping it down on here, and this is an Oracle 651. If you don't want to actually cut the stencil, I will, like I said, link the PNG file and my website in the description, and you can actually plug this into a Cricut or whatever device you have, and it should work out pretty well. We did use transfer paper. Because I did not use a Cricut, I primarily used this blade right here. Do be careful, they are very sharp. This is made by X-Acto, really good thing. Gloves, you're gonna want gloves. We use a lot of acetone, so that's the next thing I want to talk about, and lots of paper towels to clean off the stamp. And I even used a little bit of extra piece because I had some extra, and taped down to keep the Discraft logo on there, but we did erase the Meteor, mid-range, and the flight numbers. You are going to want to have toothpicks. This helps with popping the glue beds. You are going to want glue. I did end up using a pie pan, and this pie pan has been used a couple of different times, and I just saran wrap it. You can see the glue in there right there, so I didn't have to do a full glue bed, but I did have to use a little extra glue to make sure it worked. I used black, this is by iodide poly, and then I used sun yellow and fire red by Pro Chem and Dye. I do have the description right here and a card right there, exactly how I did that. I did the same format for the black iodide poly that I did for the other two. I added a little bit of dip and glow to it as well to give it kind of a UV effect. Then I used an acetone container. Get a Mr. Clean eraser. This works really good. This is a new disc sent straight from the factory, so we did want to make sure it was nice and clean. We used a fair amount of blue painter's tape. I like picks a lot. If you watch any of my other videos, this works really well for picking out the different pieces that you need. A Sharpie is very helpful. Some kind of paintbrush, because what I actually did is I actually painted this on there. Some scissors, because you may want to cut some stuff up. This is a little tool made by Cricut, but you don't have to buy this expensive thing. You can use a credit card, a gift card, whatever you want to use for that. And so this is pretty much all the supplies you need to make a sweet looking disc. That pie pan helps make the glue dye. Then we get rid of the logo down here. Then we make the stencil and do that. I'm going to walk through all the different things you need to make that happen. And so just keep watching in this video. The first thing we're going to do is go ahead and get your Mr. Clean eraser, get a couple of paper towels. We're going to go clean the disc. Remember, the disc look like this. The goal is it looks like that at the end. So you can go ahead and turn on some warm water. Get your magic eraser and go ahead and put it and kind of get it in the water to help activate it. The reason we wash the disc is it does really help make sure that there's no fingerprints on it. And these are both new discs. I don't think they've even been thrown once, but maybe once. You can still see all the original stickers on it. Then you're going to turn off your water and just go ahead and dry it off. And by the time this is completely dry, it'll be ready to go in the dye disc. But the dye bed with, the dye bed. So after this is sat for 24 hours, you can go and peel back the plastic, pull the disc out and up, and go ahead and set it down into the sink. This is an outdoor sink, and so I don't mind if it gets a little messy. Go ahead and spray a whole lot of water and Dawn dish soap all over it. This will start breaking down the glue and allowing us to put on some water too. Begin to show you what the final product of this portion looks like of the dye. And I really like how that looks. Remember, it was this color, so this dye has definitely helped change the color. And give it a little bit more life. Make sure you get the edge really good too. Sometimes that's an easy part to forget. This is a little wider since it's not a distance driver, since it is a mid-range. And so you want to make sure you get that edge really good. Man, that disc almost just looks cool enough right there, but we still have a whole lot more work to do, and I'll show you each and every one of the steps on how to make it to the final product, which you saw in the thumbnail of this video. Or maybe you didn't see it on the thumbnail of this video, and it's going to be a surprise as we continue to go along. But you can see it made a really nice edge all the way around. Like I said, you can still kind of see that it says Meteor, but the ESP is gone, and I think it just makes it look a lot better for what we're going to do next. After you've cleaned your disc, we're going to go ahead and kind of move our station around a little bit. One other thing you may want as well as just a plate to sit this disc on when you are removing the acetone. So I'm going to get a couple of these other things out of my way, and we'll go ahead and begin to pull back the sticker. Here, this is that vinyl. And this is kind of a semi-permanent vinyl. It is kind of hard to do with gloves on, because you will want gloves on the whole time as well, just because you're working with some pretty harsh chemicals and dyes. And so go ahead and pull all that back. Discard of your trash. And so you try to do this the first time, and if you have a really straight edge, use the straight edge. And again, they wanted Discraft to stay on their disc. And so I'm going to go ahead and just wrap that around. But they did not want Meteor. My buddy John, whose disc this is, just wanted it to say Discraft. So I'm not worried about every air bubble for this. And I just kind of threw it on there. I just don't want it to leak in where it says Discraft. So this little tool that comes with the Cricut works really well. You can really use anything that's kind of a putty knife in effect. Okay, you got that just where you want it. Go ahead and make sure you got plenty of paper towels handy, as when you use acetone you want to be careful. And we'll go ahead and pop that acetone top off. And we're just going to pour a little bit on to the rag to begin with. And this can's pretty empty, that's why I had to dip it so far. We'll have to do this a couple of times, because that black stamp always is pretty dark on these. And one thing, when you do erase the stamp, you can still kind of see it, which is what I kind of like as well. So it's not like you've totally gotten rid of the stamp. You will still be able to see a little bit of it. Especially if it's a black one. They're really hard to get them all the way off. So I've used that paper towel pretty good. Go ahead and get yourself another fresh paper towel. We're just going to kind of continue to do the same process. You don't have to put this on a plate, but it does just kind of help keep your work surface clean. And I'm just going to get, this is just basic water. I'm going to get another paper towel and just kind of clean it off with some water. Making sure that is all the way done right there. And as you can see, that stamp came off really well. There's still just a little teeny tiny bit. Go ahead and wipe off your plate as well, and you can put that back off to the side. Okay, gonna go ahead and remove that. Just one final touch up, and that looks pretty good right there. I'm liking how that looked and turned out. Okay, the next thing, you could do a couple of different things here. I'm just going to go ahead and set up my glue bed. So I'm going to move some of this stuff back out of the way and set up my glue bed. Now this has been a used glue bed, and we are going to let this sit for 24 hours. So this project will take a couple of days. You see how dark purple this one is? It has been used quite a few different times. Go ahead and grab some clear glue. And I'm going to try to put just a little bit extra of a layer on top. So hopefully anything left over. And I normally don't go this quick on the top, but I'm kind of wanting to hit up the whole thing just a little bit extra than normal, just because I don't want any of this purple to come through, and I'm kind of cheap and don't want to buy a whole bunch of glue. So you go ahead and look for where you need to pop any air bubbles, and what I found really works best for air bubbles is to just kind of pull the dye or the glue. It's got a little dye left in it, but to just pull the glue to the edge. You can try to pop it. I'm not very good at it. If you did end up finding this in the description link, make sure you let it sit a day or two if you bought it through Amazon. A lot of times there are so many air bubbles that first time when you get it. Next thing I'm going to do is go ahead and scoot this over just a little bit. And we'll go ahead and open this up. And this up. These are on there really tight, which is what you want, but it does make it hard getting them back open. If you don't put them on super tight, you do have the chance of them drying out on you, and you don't really want that. And I apologize for not having this part in the video. I thought I already had these out, but I did not. So I do label these just so I know what they are and where they're at. So we're only really going to use sun yellow right now. And I'm just going to add just a touch of this, dip it into it. So, and I spilled a little bit. You can see how bright it is where that spilt. And so that has a little bit of UV dye built into it. So I am going to crank that back down on there real tight and just lightly spin it. Try not to mix up too much of the stuff on the bottom. Go ahead and spin it off. And when you do this, you don't want to put it all the way down at the bottom because there's almost always just a little bit of dye left over. So you're really just going for the top. And you suck it up. And I'm going to be putting a ton of yellow. So it doesn't really matter where you go at first, because I want yellow to really shine through on this disc. We are going to add some other colors as well. Just a little bit of red, just to give it some different kind of accent color. But you can even see some of that the dye in that UV dye coming through, which is kind of cool. We're going to go ahead and grab just a little bit of the red. I just want to put a couple small drops. I think that's all I'm going to do. And then I'm actually going to put some more yellow down to try to like push that even back a little further. And sometimes it will change the color of it because we're adding some non-iodide poly and, or sorry, some non-pro chem into it. And so you do have to kind of be careful of that. So with this, I like to go ahead and get another paper towel kind of ready. And you just go ahead and grab your paper towel and get your toothpick. And I'm just going to do a couple, every time I'm going to wipe it, just a couple of hits across it. In fact, I think I'm going to add one more red. I wasn't going to, but I think for symmetrical shaping of this, I kind of need to. And I'm actually going to add some more yellow. I really want the yellow to pop on this disc. Okay, we can go ahead and throw that in there. So the next thing you got to figure out is exactly where you want the yellow and the other colors to go on this. So I like to move my pie pan around a little bit, and I will give you kind of a closer look at what that looks like. It is kind of hard to see on here, but that's okay. So I'm going to go ahead and take the disc and kind of figure out where I want it, and then also thinking about where this is kind of going to sit on it as well. And so you may want to kind of readjust your disc in correspondence with that as well. And so I think I kind of want the lightning bolt to, in a sense, go like right there. So how I normally do this is I normally take it and I set it down in the glue from left to right to left. And I just let it hit the glue and then start putting the other side down. And then I kind of push it to the edge, just like that. Now this is not a lotion bed or even more per se a This is not a lotion bed or a shaving cream bed. So one of the things I like to do is not put anything on top of it. You'll see a lot of people put stuff on top of it. You don't really need to on this. And so I like to go ahead and put the cling wrap back over it. Let this thing sit for a full 24 hours. That gives you normally the best ability for it to make sure that dye soaks up into the disc. And this is something new. I've never tried it on kind of a peach disc to try to dye it yellow. And so we're going to try our best to do that. As this thing sits for the next 24 hours, you will want to take some acetone. And I have a little jar for that. So you can go ahead and screw these jars back on nice and tight. And try not to do what I just did where I just spilled everywhere, because that does happen. And so you'll take that acetone jar, and the goal of this is just to clean out these, because we are going to be letting this sit for 24 hours. We don't want this to get back in there and go back up in that. Then you are going to want to tighten these down really good and hopefully not spill it like I just did the black one. So after this is sat for 24 hours, you can go and peel back the plastic, pull the disc out and up, and go ahead and set it down into the sink. This is an outdoor sink, and so I don't mind if it gets a little messy. Go ahead and spray a whole lot of water and Dawn dish soap all over it. This will start breaking down the glue and allowing us, put on some water too, begin to show you what the final product of this portion looks like of the dye. And I really like how that looks. Remember, it was this color, so this dye has definitely helped change the color. And give it a little bit more life. Make sure you get the edge really good too. Sometimes that's an easy part to forget. This is a little wider since it's not a distance driver, since it is a mid-range. And so you want to make sure you get that edge really good. Man, that disc almost just looks cool enough right there, but we still have a whole lot more work to do, and I'll show you each and every one of the steps on how to make it to the final product, which you saw in the thumbnail of this video. Or maybe you didn't see it on the thumbnail of this video, and it's going to be a surprise as we continue to go along. But you can see it made a really nice edge all the way around. Like I said, you can still kind of see that it says Meteor, but the ESP is gone, and I think it just makes it look a lot better for what we're going to do next. So the next step of this project is you can either print out this or you can go ahead and get that vinyl print. It's going to be really hard to see on here, and do it on a Cricut. Totally up to you. So you can go ahead and put the Oracle 651 paper down, then your paper on top of it, and go ahead and tape all 4 sides down. I am taping it to this wood table. This is an older wood table. I'm not worried if I get it cut, but if you do want to make sure you have something like cardboard or something underneath it. I am going to be using this X-Acto knife kit, and you do want a pointed blade like this one and not a rounded blade like this one to use. And so these just simply work by unscrewing them a little bit, and then screwing them back in. I always test it just to make sure you're all the way locked down and in. These are very sharp. Do be very careful. I'm gonna put a couple more pieces of tape on there just to make sure we're not moving it. And so all I'm doing is kind of putting tape on all 4 sides and down to the table. You're just kind of cutting straight through. Anything that has the dark black on it, you're pretty much just cutting out. And this is kind of the same effect you would get with a Cricut or whatever other kind of machine you may or may not have. This is kind of a little easier way, because guess what? It's only costing you a couple of dollars for an X-Acto knife or something similar to it, instead of a couple of $100 for a machine. Take your time, go steady, go smooth. Try to not recreate cuts. Occasionally you have to because you've missed the mark a little bit, but if you can avoid that, that is helpful. One of the hard things is actually lining this up straight. Also, if you're not on a wood table that like I am right now, this is just a piece of plywood I've used for many videos and many months and almost a year now. You can do it on anything else you want to do. Cardboard works really well. I'm not super concerned because I do use this a lot in videos. I'm going to put a little piece of tape over this right here just to give us that ability to again, go slow, make your cuts good. Sometimes you do have to change up angles, and if you do, try your best to meet back up in the exact same spot. My wife's Cricut blade is kind of messed up right now, so I have to do this freehand. Hopefully soon I can get a new blade put on and go ahead and do some of these stencils with a blade versus just freehand. It's not the worst thing doing them freehand though. I don't think it makes, I mean it does make a difference, but not drastically. I find kind of pulling the blade more than pushing it does help. So just slowly pulling the blade, putting a good amount of pressure down as you're doing it, does make it work pretty well. So we're going to go ahead and untape that and see what kind of damage we have. See if it did mostly come out. Oh. This painter's tape is really sticky sometimes, which is good. but it also sticks to gloves sometimes, and I don't necessarily like that. So now that you have this, a couple of things you can do. You can use a piece of transfer paper, which is what I'm going to try to do my best with. And so transfer paper is just kind of sticky paper that you can put down on top of it, and it does help transfer everything over. So kind of just like that. You don't have to have it perfect. Then it allows you to be able to peel off stickers, vinyls, whatever you want to call them. And it allows you to place it on things like disc very easily. So I think this is probably the hardest part of the entire project, is making sure this is lined up when you can't really see it. Put your knife out of the way. You're pretty much done with that. We may need it, but I'm hoping we don't. This is probably the hardest part of the whole thing, trying to make sure this is centered. And in fact, I think I'm going to do it different. I think I'm going to go upside down with it. So it's about 12 inches on center. And so instead of guessing, I'm just going to try to do something a little different I've never tried before. Just thought about this as I was doing it. It took the UPC off of this old ruler I had. That's kind of funny. Pretty much all I'm doing here is just making marks. It's a 12-inch wide transfer paper, so I'm putting at the 6-inch mark, and I'm going to do this all kind of on all four sides, just so I have an idea of what center looks like. And so this does take a couple of extra seconds, but I think it does help make sure it gets exactly where it needs to go. And it is very sticky, so don't put a lot of pressure down on the ruler, and it should be fine if you stick your hand down on it real heavily. It may actually stick. It did pull off the little sticker on the back of the ruler like I showed a minute ago. But yeah, you're pretty much just looking for that 6-inch mark, because it's a 12-inch transfer paper, and just putting a little teeny tiny Sharpie mark. This will help put a couple let little us know
dots
exactly where
just to
center
kinda
is
give me
at. Place of reference for this. Gonna want that there, and so maybe that will give me kind of an idea. So this disc is 8.5 inches. So I probably should have done that too. Actually, that one's pretty close. And that one's pretty close. So dead center is right there. Nope. So trying to find kind of dead center is not always the easiest thing to do. And then you just take the transfer paper and apparently the UPC of this one, and just kind of pick it up and put it over the disc, just like that. Same thing with this corner. Now, if you're going to put this like in a bed of something, you do want to make sure you use a full piece. I just used a piece I've used before, but if you are going to use it and dump it in something, I'm just going to be using a paintbrush to get the colors on. So I am not going to be using it like some people do with stencils, where you put it and actually let it sit for a couple of hours, or sometimes even days people do. That's not the kind of stencil I'm doing here. If so, you do want a full 12-inch so you can make sure this is all wrapped around. Okay. So I'm going to just kind of check to see how far off we are. We're pretty close. It's not perfect by any means. Go ahead and grab your tool. You can use a credit card. You can use whatever you need to. And the goal of this is just to flatten it out where we are going to be putting the die here in a second. So any of those air bubbles do need to go all the way down. I'm not worried about the center of the lightning bolt, just the edges of it. So the center doesn't matter as much, just the edges. And then we're just going to go ahead and pick it up. Sometimes you do have to cut the edge off right there. That's looking good. Any of these little parts that need to be cut, you can just kind of come back and cut those. Then I go one last time around the area. Now when I'm doing this, I am not like trying to cut into the disc. I am just lightly putting the blade on there and letting the blade do all the work, just very, very, very lightly. I like to have a couple of paper towels down underneath my workstation as we're getting ready to dye this. Also going to go ahead and grab the black. And we're just going to grab just kind of a medium-sized paintbrush. I'm not going all the way down in it, just going on the very top and just slowly painting that. Be careful because there are some areas that it could get coloration and you don't want that. So do take your time, go slow. You don't have to be like extra careful, but do be careful. You just don't want any slop and splatter. And this stuff is pretty dark. You can see how it's already kind of dyed the disc in that area. Let one side dry, kind of come back and do the other side. These are just really cheap paint brushes too for this. I don't get really expensive ones. I just kind of go the cheap route on them. Now if I'm doing a spin dye, I do get a little bit better quality ones for that, but for this stencil stuff, this is kind of all I do. This came in a multi-packet. Probably Walmart or someplace like that, maybe even Dollar Tree. And you're going to go ahead and let this sit for about 5 minutes. You can go ahead and wash it off in some acetone so your paintbrush stays good as well. So like I mentioned, just get some acetone and wash out your paintbrush really well. Now that that's set for 5 minutes, I put a little bit of Dawn dish soap and water spray on it. to just kind of clean up the surface. Again, try to keep away from any of the stuff, the center part where we're going to go next. But that's just to kind of keep it clean, and you will get some along the vinyl to come off. You just don't want that sticking on there. We'll do one final wash of the disc at the end. Okay, the next thing to do is to go ahead and get the lightning bolt up, which is sometimes really easy to do, other times it is not going to be as easy. So I'm going to go to a spot that should be a little easier right here, and we'll work from this spot. And sometimes I do rip the sticker a little bit like I'm doing right here, just to give myself some good working area. And I'll just kind of cut the sticker off at that angle so I can come in and hopefully get a really clean release at the end here. Pretty good. Yeah, these sharp angles are what's the harder part. And again, I'm not cutting the disc at all. I'm just simply putting the blade down just a little bit, and it's doing all the work for me. That corner should be easy because it's pretty much all the way up already. But I'm going to come back and kind of just tear this off. Just easier to work with because these are really sticky. I mean, these are meant for outdoor vinyl for up to 5 years. It does have like a 24-hour cure time, but we're not really using it for outdoor vinyl, so I'm not worried about a 24-hour cure time before doing what we're doing. If you're super worried about a dyed disc, you can wait 24 hours with this on, but I'm not. So go ahead and get your little scraper tool or a credit card. Same concept. Our main focus is on the edges here to get it nice and sharp. And in fact, I'm going to edit this edge up just a touch. Again, I'm not really even cutting. I'm just letting the tool do the work. I will say if you do have a Cricut, some of these edges do tend to go a little bit better. But overall, I'm already excited for how this disc is turning out. I like to put my knife away whenever I'm done with it. We're going to be using the fire red this time. And I do put these on really tight, so you do need to kind of be careful. Go ahead and grab the fire red. And again, you're not going all the way down, and you're just getting the top of it. And you just kind of take your time, go slow with it. Now there is some acetone in this, and so you do have to be careful of ruining stamps if you spend too long going over the same area. So I try to go kind of quick over the stamp so I don't ruin it. But same concept, you're going to be doing this 4 or 5 different times. You may need to do it just a touch longer than you did the black, for the main reason the black is so strong in color. So we'll let that sit another second or two and then do one final layer. And with this layer, I'm going to really try not to even get too much on the stamp because it's already starting to deteriorate just a little bit, which is fine. It's kind of part of using acetone. Same concept, go ahead and put the cap back on. And go ahead and get your acetone. So I did clean off the black in this one already, and so it's going to look really dark, but that's okay because it will just still do its job of cleaning that off. Once you're done with all of it, I go ahead and kind of get a used paper towel that is dry but had some other color on it from before, and just kind of final wash that off. Go ahead and let this sit for 5 minutes and let that really soak into the dye into the disc. So now is the reveal. We're going to go ahead and have that sit for another 5 minutes. We're going to go ahead and peel this off. Go ahead and keep peeling it. Now we will want to do one thing when we get all done. We will want to wash this disc one more time because you did put some acetone on it with that red and black. So it will need washed one last time, but let's try to go ahead and see what it turned out to look like. You don't have to be super gentle with it as well. I'll get that in a second. You want to see what the disc looks like. I don't blame you. I do too. That was the perfectionist in me coming out to want that little teeny tiny piece when there's still all this other. So that turned out really, really, really stellar. Remember, it looked like this, a very muted color, and now it looks like this with a whole lot of amazingness happening. You can still see the Discraft logo. When that flies, that's going to look so cool. So there is one other thing I want to show you. If you use a UV light, you can actually see the disc really well because we added a little bit of that UV dye to that. So if you're out on the course and you're playing a glow round and you lose your disc, you can put a UV flashlight on and be able to find your disc. It doesn't glow if you put a cell phone up to it, but if you do have one of these little UV flashlights, you can find your disc really easily. I'll do it one more time just to show you. Out playing, find your disc. It shines and glows really well. Thank you guys so much for watching. I am going to wash this off one last time, but you don't need to see me do that. Same thing as what we've done before. Some Dawn dish soap and water, and just rinse it off. If this was helpful, please like and subscribe. Please comment if you have any questions. Thank you guys so much for watching. Who thinks this Meteor is cool? Give me a big thumbs up if you do.